thank you very much for being here. Pleasure to talk to you.
Es ist sehr schön, hier zu sein.
On a sunny Berlin day.
Guten Morgen, yeah.
Yes. You have been in business for many years. Your career spans over decades.
It's awful, actually. I'm in my 5th decade. Isn't that terrible?
Oh, wow. Do you remember playing here in Berlin while the wall was still up?
Oh, of course, yeah. I remember playing in East Berlin quite a few times. We played the football stadiums over there, and extraordinary memories. For example, I mean, silly things like the smell of the trabbies, and it's like those cars are like grass cutting machines, mowing machines. And there was one particular poignant moment. I remember I was going back towards the checkpoint, and I watched an elderly couple holding hands, walking very slowly towards the wall, holding hands, looking over, and then turning back again. And I could see they had tears in their eyes. And I thought, well, I can make it through, and they can't. And I mean, just the horror of a city divided like that suddenly. And obviously they had relatives over there, over on the west. But I'm quite sure that now that all that's been happening historically, I'm sure the Stasi had a good file on me. I'd be curious to see what they say. But interesting times. And if I may also make a mention of, as somebody who frequently came to Berlin, I, for example, played in the Waldbühne several times. And there was one concert when Gorbachev was just in the city that night to talk about glasnost and perestroika. And the atmosphere was just electric. People were buzzing. And then when the wall came down, you could instantly tell the people who came from the East, not just because of the clothes, but more interestingly, from their body language. They were, in English the word is furtive, they were kind of looking around to see if they'd been followed. And it took about a year for that all to change as I kept coming back to Berlin. It's
very interesting that you realized that on this close basis.
Yeah.
So interesting. You're coming back to Berlin next year. You're also here to promote your tour, and you're playing at the Friedrichstadtpalast,
yes,
which was in the far east, and right beside the place where you might have seen this elder couple, because actually this was called the Tränenpalast, the Palace of Tears.
Oh, is that?
Because it would be a great title for a song by Chris de Burgh.
Yeah, the Palace of Tears. Yeah, there you go. I'm starting an idea now. I don't think I performed there before. I've played in a lot of places. The last time I was here in Berlin, we sold out the O2 Arena, which I think is now the Mercedes-Benz Arena.
It is, yes. Yeah. But the Waldbühne is a fantastic venue.
Waldbühne, gorgeous.
So you must have enjoyed it.
Very much, on a hot summer's day.
Yes, fantastic. More than 30 years ago, you released Into the Light, the album which had the famous lady in, what was the color?
Green?
Green?
Blue? I don't know.
and I mean, you've been doing albums before that, and you always, you had been a successful musician before this album came out, but somehow this led to global pop stardom for you, this album. What is the best thing about global fame, and what is worse?
Well, the nice thing about that particular album, it came on an upward trajectory, because my first album came out in 1974, and that was a big hit in South America. Then the second one, Spanish Train and Other Stories, became multi-platinum in Canada, and it's still an iconic record for a lot of people. They keep saying, oh, Spanish Train is my record. And then it kind of kept going up, and then my first #1 album here in Germany was The Getaway in 1982. Again,
Don't Pay the Ferryman was on there?
Don't Pay the Ferryman, and High in Emotion 1984. Both are real rock songs. And then suddenly comes this ballad, Lady in Red, which is still huge, like in America and Russia and places like that. I suppose the upside was I was ready for it. Not like quite a few young stars who have their first record as a #1. Like, I mean, that is very hard to deal with. That's like being taken in a helicopter to the top of Mount Everest and said, right, you learn how to climb. It's really hard. I feel really sorry for people like that. I suppose the downside is that if people don't like Lady in Red, and I'm sure there's plenty of people who don't, they can't stand anything I do. They never bother to listen to anything else. It's just Lady in Red, the soft ballad, you know. But I've got a lot of gold records and platinum records at home. But there's a poster that I look at from time to time, and it's about that time, and it's Rock Over Germany. And it was 3 nights. The first night was Tina Turner and Rod Stewart. Second night was Prince, and I was the third night, the closing night. You don't do that if you're as soft. I love the song. For me, it's by no means the best thing I've ever written. I've got things that I think are much, but
you don't want to be reduced on this song.
No,
sure,
it's
many people
stuck in the memory.
Yes, yes. But there, on this new album, we'll be talking about a new album in a minute.
Okay.
There are lots of rock songs, straightforward rock songs.
Absolutely, yeah. Bethlehem is a good example of that.
We will talk about this song in a minute. Do you still live south of Dublin?
Yes, I live in the countryside south of Dublin, and all my children have left home. Actually, my elder boy, Hubie, and he goes under the name of Hubie Davison. He's a very good musician, much better than his father, and he does electronic music. He releases records, vinyl records. He's got a record company right here in Berlin, and he's played DJ sets. Is it Bethlehem?
At the Bethlehem, world famous club.
Yeah, he's done that a few times in other places. And he lives very close to me. My daughter got married, Rosanna, 2 years ago, and she lives 10 minutes. And my younger boy has his dream job working for the commercial division of Liverpool Football Club, which is his and mine.
With Jürgen Klopp, the German.
A wonderful Jürgen Klopp, yeah.
Coach.
The ordinary one.
Emotional guy.
Very good, I like him, yeah.
You seem to be, after all the years in business, such a down-to-earth person.
That's because I'm so small.
No, I don't believe that.
I'm closer to the earth than most people.
But living in a small town, I think the population is something about 1,800. Is it what keeps your feet on the ground?
Yes. Although my house is outside this little village called Enniskerry, and it's fairly isolated, but my family keep me grounded, and also it's been something in my head for years that you try and become... there's 2 people here. When my daughter won Miss World, I did remember saying to her that there's 2 people. One is the beautiful, glamorous young woman who's always photographed and on television and stuff. But the person at home is just like you and I. You wear your pajamas and your slippers, your hair's all over the place. Just don't ever bring the first one home. And I've never wanted to be a star, it never felt comfortable. I know that you probably meet lots of stars, but I've never been comfortable by acting like one, with lots of bodyguards. For example, this morning, I needed some exercise, so I walked very quickly, on my own, as always, down to the Holocaust Memorial for about the 10th time, and I was stunned and amazed again by the vision of the artist and the architect of that particular memorial. I think I know what he meant, but for me it's very moving. But that's the kind I always walk places on my own.
I have the same feeling. I understand exactly what he means. This desperation and feeling lost and feeling...
And you go down and suddenly this thing towering above you.
Turn up like this.
Everyone's different. I mean, every single one is slightly extraordinary place.
But it's a very precious advice you gave to your daughter, to leave the famous person outside.
When you come through your door, goodbye to the famous person.
And I read somewhere, I don't know whether this is true or not, that your daughter, who was a former Miss Ireland and Miss World, she released a book lately. Absolutely.
She last year she put out a book called Eat Yourself Beautiful, because she's a vegan and really looks stunning. But the book is about what food does to your body, because she's qualified nutritionist. And that was the #1 bestseller. And then she wrote so much for the first book, they said, well, make another one.
Okay.
So she's just put one out last month called Eat Yourself Beautiful, Eat Yourself Fit, which is about how you can use your nutrition for fitness.
Was there any advice you could take from her?
Yeah, plenty.
Plenty?
I need a bit more advice. But actually, she gave me some very good advice a couple of years ago, which I think I should pass on to everybody. Just eat less meat, wheat, and dairy. Mm-hmm. Just cut it down. Mm-hmm. Instead of, your body will improve. Your body will like you more. Just less meat, wheat, and dairy, and I do.
Mm-hmm. That means you will not show up at the currywurst place here?
I saw it on the way in, just by the airport, the old airport.
Okay.
It's not Tegel, not Schönefeld. What's the name of the other one? It's
spelled in Tegel, TXL.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it has this famous S-Bahn currywurst, and I don't know why, but I know it.
Well, there was a long queue. To go in, and I've had one actually at about 3 o'clock in the morning. You have your beer, you have your little schnapps, you have your currywurst. It's delicious.
Cool. Do you show up in the pub once in a while, at home, in this small town?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Huh? And you bring your 12-string? No.
No, I don't. I leave that at
Okay.
I leave that at home.
So how do the people react on you if you show up in the pub?
Actually, in Ireland, they ignore you. Just there he is,
Okay.
And it's fine with me.
Yes, it's same in Berlin.
Yeah.
People don't care too much about fame in Berlin.
No. I notice
which is nice.
It's, it's sometimes when you're going into a restaurant and somebody says, "Oh, very nice to meet you," and most of the time just leave you alone, which is perfect for me.
What I like about Irish pubs, people are always singing. So there must such a strong singing DNA in Irish people. And the more they drink, the more they sing.
Yeah, the more they drink, the more they sing. I think Irish people, they have a very good attitude to life, which is, tomorrow we die, enjoy yourself today. What's the point in getting upset about, for example, politics, because you can't change anything anyway. Just enjoy. And they're very welcoming to strangers as well, as you probably noticed. And I think every Irish person can either tell a story or a poem or sing a song. It's part of the way we're brought up.
Yeah, I went to pubs from Dublin to Limerick, down the Shannon River and the Ring of Kerry, and I heard Robert Burns ballads and Irish traditional songs over and over again. So I really love that.
Well, there have been times, if I'm in a pub somewhere, particularly in the west of Ireland, and a guy's got a guitar, I'll get up and. But I do that, and I did that in Fulda recently, actually.
In Fulda?
Yeah, there was a guy playing the guitar on the street, and he was English actually, and he was playing some of the songs that I knew, and I said, "Do you mind if I've got a plectrum in my pocket? Wait a second, where is it? Got my ever-present plectrum, just in case, you see."
That's the first aid kit.
It's like somebody in an aeroplane. Not they call for a doctor. Says, "Is there a doctor on board?" Does anybody on board got a plectrum? I say, "Yeah, I've got
one." Chris, let us talk about the new album, A Better World.
Okay.
First of all, congratulations on it. It's an extraordinary album. Interesting, deep lyrics, nicely arranged. Different musical influences from Irish and Celtic music to Arabian and then Caribbean sounds on this album. And some rock songs, some pop songs, and I feel they circle around universal topics. Love, religion, and war. You've always had a precise look on politics as a songwriter or history. Are you concerned about the condition the world is in today?
I think everybody is. But I think one of my primary concerns, actually there's two things just to answer what you said, is that I feel very strongly that you should write songs about who you are today, not who you would have liked to have been 50 years ago. There are people my age who still write songs as if they're 22 years old, love songs. I don't agree with that, but I want to reflect what I'm looking at without making it, miserable. Just, for example, Homeland, which we get to. But the other thing is that with 24-hour news, I believe we've become a very anxious society. Things happen today could be happening. I just look at the news today. Things are happening in Aleppo, for example, in Indonesia, in California. They shouldn't concern me. They do, because I'm a compassionate human being. But after a while, your compassion gets crushed. And we're in a society now that, with text messaging and WhatsApp and everything, if, for example, your wife or your child goes out and they say, I'll text you at midnight, by 12:15 you're saying, no text. 12:30, oh my God, what's happened? This stuff we should be more relaxed, and I think 24-hour news is not helping. But that said, what I wanted to reflect on this album was a variety of things, from imagination, as you say, love, and exploration into the imagination, and reflection on what's happening today.
Mm-hmm. Are you a religious person?
No. I can answer that quickly enough. I was brought up Church of Ireland, which is Protestant, and I respect everybody's religion if they want to be Buddhist or Islam or whatever. But for me, I have a problem with organized religion. Recently I was in a Catholic church. Ireland is very strongly Catholic.
I think it's 95% Catholic
about that, yeah.
about
and
that.
My side is very small. Mm-hmm. And the priest was talking for a long time, like nearly 2 hours. And most of the time, I wanted to stand up and say, how do you know that? Prove it. I wanted to ask questions. And so, you know, I do believe that a lot of religion was formed that the least educated people and the most superstitious people would believe in the hell and the horror of the afterlife. And I think a lot of that religion was built on keeping the masses down. But the moment you ask questions, they don't like that very much, the authorities. And I urge everybody, my children, just ask questions. Don't accept it just because that's the way it always has been.
The Dalai Lama lately said, and I think you might agree, that ethic in our days is far more important than religion.
Absolutely.
And I mean, if one of the great leaders, religious leaders, says something like this.
Yes, well, I think that's very interesting. And I'm actually quite what's the word? Certainly not religious, but I believe in spirituality and certainly a greater force. I mean, how can we, just because we're human beings, assume that there isn't a 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th sense just because we can't see it or feel it? I do believe science is making things more difficult for those people who want to think outside the parameters. If science says it's not true, then it's not true, you know?
Bethlehem, first song on the album, is about the so-called cradle of Christianity. Have you been there?
Yes, I have. Bethlehem is an interesting song because there's a short 45-second instrumental called Hope in the Human Heart, which is very beautiful and very classical, and that's the way I've started quite a few of my recent albums. And then the last thing you expect is this dun, dun, dun. That was deliberate. So Bethlehem I wrote in a very short time, like less than a day. I got the music, the idea, the lyric. In fact, by the end of the day, I remembered all the lyrics. I could play the whole song in one go, which is extraordinary for me, I can tell you. I like to spend a long time working on getting that lyric. But I was in Bethlehem last year, just before Christmas, to do a television show in the Church of the Nativity, which is the cradle of Christianity. This is where Jesus was born. And it was an amazing feeling, actually, to be there in a town surrounded by a wall, and a lot of pilgrims go there. I would say a lot of them felt the same as I, which is slight disappointment, sad about the political situation, which is the irony. We have the center of Christianity is also the flashpoint of some of the worst trouble that we have, you know, certainly in the Middle East and possibly wider than that. But the thing about the song, it's not about the three kings, because as you see, the three kings arrive at the birthplace of Christ, and the guy says, who? Never heard of them. And that it starts to give a clue about the rest of the song. And then the next one is about the dove and the eagle, the hawk and the dove. The dove flies too close to the sun, and that's Greek mythology. Icarus to fly too close to the sun. His wings were made of wax, and he fell. But it's a nuclear explosion. Bang! The dove is gone. St. Paul and the devil discussing whether they should have a peace treaty. Mm-hmm. The devil signs his name, and it's disappeared after 2 days. The devil can be anybody you want, current, past. So I've actually said Bethlehem is a mirror to your reading of history, past, present, and future.
And it seems it's all about the eternal struggle between good and bad.
Absolutely. This is something I touched on years ago with a song called Spanish Train, about a game of cards between God and the devil.
Wasn't that your favorite song?
Absolutely. And the devil cheats.
The devil cheats.
And he wins.
Yeah. That's pessimistic.
Yeah. Well, not really, because I think it looks at the yin-yang of what we are, where all of us have... another song, Chain of Command, because it always fascinated me that people in business and in the military would do something under order that they knew was completely wrong, immoral, abhorrent, and they shouldn't do it. But they do it because they've been ordered to.
Yeah, the song is about a 17-year-old from Aberdeen.
Poor guy, yeah.
Who gets the order to execute somebody.
Yep, execute the leader.
The leader, and he has to put the trigger.
He has to pull the trigger.
Says.
And then
blame it on the chain of command.
Blame it on the chain. Yes. You're quite right. And he's set up, basically, the general set him up, and he is then shot himself. It's ironic. It sounds a bit miserable, but it's not. It's a good, punchy rock song.
So how can we break this chain of command?
You can't, because people are too scared. I think it will forever exist. Again, it's the extraordinary thing about human beings, you know. We celebrate a medical breakthrough. We celebrate, now we're on the edge of discovering a cure for AIDS, for example, or malaria. And everybody, you know, Nobel Prizes are handed out. Yet all the time, we're developing weapons to kill us all faster, quicker, more
brutal.
Unbelievable. What are we?
Homeland. A song about refugees forced to leave their home, their safe house, because of the war. As you might know, our Chancellor, Angela Merkel, these days is badly blamed for inviting refugees to Germany. What do you think about that?
I know all about that, yes. I know about AFD, and I think in a compassionate way, I think Angela Merkel was correct. I think there's historical reasons for Germany to show that compassion to the refugees. I think it's understandable that the right wing are reacting as well. I think what happened in Cologne and Munich and Hamburg and possibly Berlin around Christmas, New Year's last year was terrible. And I think that set every refugee back. The actions of a few covered a lot. We have economic refugees, which is slightly different, but the ones I'm referring to, again, not necessarily just here and now from Syria, but could be any time. And what I wanted to draw attention to was the fact that it could be you or me or anybody in this room. Can you imagine being in a war situation where your home has been destroyed, possibly with some of your family members in it? You have nothing at all except the clothes that you're wearing. And I last year, actually early this year when I was doing my tour in the summer, I met a young man from Syria who had been walking non-stop every day for 3 months just to get somewhere safe. And I think we must remember the hell that they've gone through to even get to a safe place, the hell they've come from, and it could be you or me, and most of all, they just want to go home.
And they deserve our empathy.
They deserve our empathy, our sympathy. It could be us. Yeah.
There are some beautiful love songs on this album. Confession to Make, Heart and Soul. As I know, you are married to your wife Diana for something like 35, 36 years.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Are these love songs coming from your imagination, or has is she worried about all the love stories you experience everywhere in the world?
She knows me well enough.
Okay.
I have a very strong imagination. I very, very rarely have written songs about things that have affected me personally, or for anybody. It very rarely happens. So it's strong imagination. I mean, I can imagine a situation where, say, two friends of mine are splitting up. I can put myself in that situation and imagine the difficulty, and maybe they want to bring themselves together again. It doesn't happen to me, but as I say, I've got a very strong imagination.
So that's a gift for a storyteller, songwriter.
It helps.
It helps, yes. And it's interesting, you hardly ever refer to yourselves in your songs.
No.
Why?
That's boring. I'm a pretty quiet and boring guy. I don't think my opinion is any more important than yours or anybody else's. What I want to offer is a chance. I mean, I'll give you an example. There's a song called All for Love, and this has resonated with quite a few people who've heard it. I've spoken to at least, well, I've read on Facebook some women who've heard it and they've started crying because they recognize themselves. So if I can write a song that people can recognize themselves in, that's fantastic. And that All for Love is about men. They should pay a little more attention to a working woman who has small children, has to get them up, get them to school after breakfast, take them to school. Meanwhile, the husband, all he has, puts on his suit and drives to work. And then she has a tough day, and that line, when Superwoman cries, something has to change. And that seems to really touch a nerve for some people. It's not that I've experienced it, but I'm aware of it.
It seems to me as if most of the great songwriters don't refer too much about themselves in their songs. So who's your favorite songwriter?
Oh, I have a few. Well, I was brought up listening to the music of the Beatles and Bob Dylan, Paul Simon, Jackson Brown, solo songwriters that I admire.
Another Irish musical icon just released an album. He's almost the same age as you are, Van Morrison.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And one song is called The Word is Mightier Than the Sword.
The word is mightier than the sword. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's a phrase that I've come across before, and he's certainly a man I admire. I've met him a number of times. He's an enigma, I suppose you could say, but enormous talent.
What is your favorite song on the album? Do you have one? Because then I know what I want to play tomorrow morning in my show.
Well, I like the punch and power of Bethlehem a lot.
Okay. That's a good radio song.
Yeah, it's a good radio song. It's going to be great live, too, when we come back on tour. I like... The absolute opposite would be The Soldier at the very end, which really is a short movie in the mind about seeing an old man walking down the beach every day, probably with a dog, and people say, well, who is this guy? No idea. He lives alone. What happened was I had this line, please remember me. It took me a long time to figure out what that meant. It's not lover saying to an ex-lover, please, you either remember or you don't. You erase it, it's gone, or you remember. So, and then it occurred to me that it was about an old soldier who, when he passes away, they discover he has no friends or family, but just a letter in his hand, which is the chorus. And a local newspaper hears about the fact that there's nobody to bury him. And on the day that they bring him down to his to the graveyard, thousands of people come out onto the street to give flowers and to say thank you, because the guy fought in the war and a war hero. And just, I think what the purpose of it is to look carefully at the elderly people around us, because a lot of them are lonely, and every old person has got a great story to tell.
And deserves respect. That's what society forgets once in a while. Shipboard Romance, a song about an English man and a German woman who meet on a ferry boat or in Cape Town, from Cape Town to Cairo. When did you have this idea?
Well, you see, there's kind of four ways I write songs. One of them is something I've been thinking about, like chain of command. The second one bubbles up from the subconscious, Bethlehem. The third one would be like a seed in the wind that drops into the garden, and after a little while it starts growing. Think, oh, that's interesting. And the fourth one is I get a phrase. And I remember reading that Lennon and McCartney used to do that quite a bit. They used to phrase and they'd say, but this one, Shipboard Romance, if you give that to 100 people and say, what does this mean to you? They'll all come up with a different story. For me, I was transported back to the 1930s, to Cape Town, 2 people getting on board. You can see all the action there and on the harbour. You know, people, it's an old tramp steamer, 8 people, there's 8 cabins. And it sets off, and there's this beautiful young lady, about 25, from Germany, wearing a big floppy hat, carrying a suitcase up the gangplank. And a young man, he's smartly dressed, about 30, and he works for De Beers Mining Company. He's English, but he's going back to England. And as they go up, this whole movie started in my head, you see. And they go up the east coast, and the bad storm in Mombasa, off the Mombasa coast. And during the storm, she's terrified, this girl, and he was calm, hero type, and she falls in love with him, and they get to Cairo, and he gives her a beautiful diamond just for memories, in case they don't meet again. And then the war breaks out, and she writes all these letters, never hears anything more. And then I would say about 20 years. See, you got join me in the movie theatre for this one. And then about 20 years later,
that's what I thought.
He's reading. He's in London. He's reading the trade papers about the diamonds for sale, and he sees this beautiful diamond. He says, "But I remember that one. I wonder if," because he hasn't forgotten her. So he goes to Antwerp, where they're doing the diamond sale, and walks into the room and walks across, and there she is, a little older, obviously, and they instantly pick it up where they left off. It's a love story. And then they make the same trip all over again. They go back to Cairo, back to Cape Town, and they take a much better ship this time up to Cairo. It's romantic, but it's a love story.
And it's before the war.
Absolutely. And then after.
1938, and then after. One song is called Open Door. It's about a captain on a sailing boat as well.
Yep.
Who sails through the dark, and they've been on the ocean for a long time. And they reach the shore. Is this a metaphor for your personal life?
Probably, actually, now that you say it. I mean, everybody knows the feeling of going away somewhere and then coming home. And these guys, as you say, if they've been at sea for a long time, for me, it's the 16th century perhaps, still a time when they looked at the horizon and they thought that you'd fall off the edge. They just didn't know. So, and they've gone away to take lands in the name of God and King, to fight with pirates, and they've seen extraordinary sights. I mean, how do you describe to somebody back home a whale? This huge thing came out of the water, whoosh, whoosh, like that, and they've seen mountains with devils, hyenas, whatever. But the key is, going back, the Open Door is the name of a pub. And it's that place where everybody gathers, all the families, and they welcome everybody home because they've been gone for such a long time. It's a homecoming song.
Let's talk about the tour next year. I mean, would you also consider this a love affair, Chris de Burgh and German audiences?
Oh, undeniably, yes. It's a long love affair, and I like it very much. I love coming here. I mean, I've come here hundreds of times. I feel very comfortable in Germany. I see more of Germany than most German people have ever seen, because I'm up and down and round and round. A few years ago, I brought a group of 10 people from Ireland. I chartered a private aircraft, and when we were airborne, I said beforehand, I thought, bring your passports and clothes for warm weather. And they thought, Spain, maybe Portugal, south of France. I said, no, we're going to Germany. And they were surprised. So we did Cologne, Heidelberg, close to Eberbach, which is near Frankfurt, Munich, and the whole trip was extraordinary. And they loved it. They loved the castles, the history, the wines, the people, the foods. the general atmosphere, because we can see this country in a different way than you guys can, because you're obviously living here. But I find it a very comfortable place to be, and I've had nothing but good times here in Germany, and I really hope that the love affair continues for a long time.
It's funny, like it's the same with me in Ireland.
Yeah,
I have a strong relation to Ireland. I don't know why. And I once read the saying that says, listening to Irish music, you remember things you haven't lived through, or you haven't experienced.
Yeah, you've spot on, because a lot of German people find there's something as an echo in Ireland. And I remember the Chieftains, you know, the music of the Chieftains.
It's Paddy Maloney and this band.
Somebody once wrote that this brings up echoes inside you that you didn't know you had. And I think that's the same thing, perhaps, with me in Germany. I study European history, and I know a lot about this country's history, not obviously the recent history, but way, way back, and how things changed here, and the importance of Germany historically in the European, the way that Europe developed and so on. I have extraordinary admiration and respect for the way that German people crushed twice in 40 or 50 years and they came back again. I think it shows a resilience and a pride, a self-respect. I mean, you've probably seen it as well. I've been to many functions here in Germany where, you know, there's a black tie thing and lots of free drink. Very few people get completely whacked. But in Ireland, it's the absolute opposite. Give an Irishman a free drink and he'll have as much as he possibly can.
Singing Raglan Road, or She Moved Through the Fair.
Yeah, but
it's
the difference between the two cultures.
About the tour. You'll be in Berlin May 8th next year at the Friedrichstadtpalast, close to the Palace of Tears.
The Palace of Tears, yeah.
The Tränenpalast. What can people expect?
Well, you know, I've written nearly 300 songs now, so it's always very difficult to come up with a running order. But one thing is for sure, we always do the songs that people expect to hear. I think it's a mistake not to do them, because people want to hear them, you know. And then there will be a variety of tracks from the new album, of course, and hopefully songs that we haven't done much in the past. So it'll be a strong rock show as always. And quite often I see what I call the reluctant husbands and boyfriends. They come into the audience, the arms crossed, going, "Oh God, no, this guy." And by the end of it, these guys are going wild, dancing on the chairs, and because we're a rock show, you know. This is with terrific lights and sound. I've got a wonderful German crew that've been with me for nearly 15 years, and we put on a hell of a show.
And you've got an extraordinary band.
Absolutely.
I mean, this album is fantastic.
It's going to be a really good
From
band.
the organ and strings attached. And
come for about 2.5, maybe even as long as 3 hours, and expect to go out jumping up and down.
Okay. Chris de Burgh.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Nice talking to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Keep on going to Ireland.